Hello, everybody out there. I'm your host, Russell Hill, and you are looking and watching the WTF, and that is What the Fixed Ops podcast. We're glad you're all here today, and I'm joined today by...
Hello, everyone. I'm Charity Dunning, and we're stoked. We have Bill Springer here today. He's the president of Cracks. Bill, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Charity. Thank you, Russell. Great to see you both again, and it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, it's been a few years.
Has it been a few years?
It has.
I think it has been, yeah. I was thinking about that yesterday. I think it's been like maybe 4 years or so. It was during the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. So,
God,
yeah.
We're 5.5 years into this podcast now.
Wow. Okay, great.
Since it has been a few years, Bill, tell us what you've been up to. Give us an update.
Oh my gosh, so much stuff. As Russell just mentioned, trying to follow in your big footsteps and stand on your shoulders with my own podcast on retention roadmap. And so I've been doing that I think we're about 50 episodes in, right around there. And that's been a lot of fun. It's opened up the doors to great conversations with a lot of people in the industry and a lot of really smart people out there doing some really interesting and exciting things. And so we've been doing that. And of course, with DriveShare, our brand that dealers use all over the country, we've been fortunate that we've been growing along with them. And that's been a lot of fun to help them with the challenges that they're facing day in and day out, with really focused on getting customers to come back and continuing that relationship time after time. So every time a customer has a need, whether it be scheduled maintenance or an unplanned need, that they think of the dealership first. And so that's what we've been doing. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's a great ride, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Yeah. So much change, and the pace of change is so fast these days. It's really great and intimidating at times.
Especially that podcast, right? Because keeping that up is quite the beast. You have to generate new guests all the time. And and kudos to you for keeping going with it. We've seen quite a few come and go over the years, and it's nice to see one stick around. But we brought you on to talk about the dealer retention report that you've come up with.
Yeah.
And I believe this is the third year you've been doing it. Tell us about what it is and what you look to accomplish in doing it.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for that, Charity. Yeah, this is the third time we've done the study, and we've done it in 3-year increments. And I think that we're in a fortunate position in that we're focused solely on the new car dealership service market, really. And so every 3 years, we've done a survey of active customers who have had their vehicles serviced at a new car dealership service department within 90 days of the survey. And what we're looking for is what's remained consistent over time and what has changed. So the first study we did was right before COVID hit, and we published that study in March of 2020. We repeated it again in 2023. And earlier, just a month and a half ago, we came out with a 2026 version. And it's interesting to see what has changed and what hasn't changed over that time. And I think, some of the key takeaways are that dealerships really are, I think, the best position competitively to really differentiate themselves based on quality of service, quality of product, facilities, employee training, and that type of thing. And I think those dealerships who are really excelling, especially in the fixed ops area, recognize that and leverage that as much as possible. And so I think that's one key takeaway. And then there's other takeaways that are just, consistent challenges that we see over time that really haven't changed much. For example, tires continue to be critically important to retention, but yet dealers still are struggling with making sure that customers are aware that they sell tires. And, for example, we asked a number of questions around tires because we recognize that it really is a big defection point for vehicle owners. And, when we asked even customers who described themselves as extremely loyal to the dealership, where they went the last time they purchased tires, still only 42% of those came to the dealership for tires. Yet that's still 10 percentage points higher than customers who were not, didn't have the same level of awareness of the dealership's tire needs. So there's still a lot of room to grow with respect to tires and making sure that vehicle owners are aware that dealerships are the best place for them.
I'd like to expound on that for a minute because we've talked about this before, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, about tires and oil changes being huge defection points. And it'd be interesting if you had some new statistics, because based upon what I've read in the last 6 months, 33% of the population, Bill, they don't even know dealerships sell tires.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is a huge, huge problem. And then I believe the business we're in, the business that you're in, transparency, data, clean data, more importantly, AI, moving at the speed of can't even keep up with it. Here's thing I can keep up with AI, because I'm in a lot of different rooms. When somebody says they're an expert or introduces an expert, I leave. I tune them out because there's no way. Whatever they're going to say is going to be so convoluted, because in 3 months it changes again. But recently, are you familiar with Steve Greenfield? He's a venture capital. So I saw him last year at SodaCon, and this year at a SodaCon again. We had some interesting conversations as well. He had a keynote on the Thursday, and he was talking and positioned right now that there's not a better time to be associated with the market that we're in and educating consumers. One, because of EV. Two, because of connected services, which is huge. Now, during this time, or when people are coming in, etc., there's not a more perfect time from video MPI to transparency with pricing and all these things to actually, we're not going to reinvent and take back all that business from the independent, but we are going to make a huge impact on it. And everything that I talk about tires. I talk about tires all the time, because if you're not selling them tires, you're setting them up for tires and building that relationship, they're going to get them somewhere. And it's probably the single largest purchase they're going to make during the warranty period. And what do you think the other places are telling them? Well, we can do all of these other things as well. You find that to be true, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Everything you said, I agree with 100%, Russell. But it's not, it's one of those situations where dealerships, and we have to help dealerships make sure that they're constantly talking about tires, because it's not, you don't start talking about tires at 40,000 miles when a customer needs them. You start talking about it from day one, and making sure that customers know, hey, it's your first service. We did a full inspection on your tires. You've got 730 seconds of tread depth on all four. They're all free of damage. You're in good shape, and they should last you X number of miles. But if you happen to have any issues or happen to wind up with a damaged tire, just bring it back to us and we'll make sure we get you back on the road right away. So it's an educational piece. And in addition to that, you mentioned oil changes earlier, Russell. We have found, in terms of, and this happened a number of years ago, the switch from the most frequent service being an oil change to the most frequent service being a tire rotation. As oil changes have gotten longer, the tire rotation has actually become the more frequent service. So if you look at, for example, a recommended service interval on a Toyota, you're changing your oil every 10,000 miles, but you're typically rotating tires every 5,000 miles. So you're doing twice as many tire rotations. So that really does create an opportunity for the dealership, again, to communicate about tires. I often say that, it's impossible for a dealership to over-communicate on tires to their consumers.
I want to make sure that everybody heard what Bill just said out there, because this is critical. Talking to me about tires right when I need them, I'm thinking you're just trying to sell me something. You have set no precedence, no relationship whatsoever, no value building, zero, zip, nada. The rotations are critical too, and the explanation part that you're talking about in communication with customers. So if they're up and you're rotating and balancing and changing the oil, there's not a better way to inspect the undercarriage and talk about the brakes and the rotors and pads and all those other things. But they think, do they really even know what a tire rotation means? Do they know how?
Yeah.
Particularly now with gas, everything is important. Proper tire inflation, proper, making sure your tires are aligned and or your wheels are aligned and balanced, and all those things are critical to gas mileage, don't they? Aren't they?
Absolutely. And on top of that, with more and more EVs on the road, EVs are clearly, tires are the primary maintenance item and the primary reason to bring that customer back. And not to mention the fact that EVs are heavier, they have much stronger acceleration, and they're harder on tires. So that creates an opportunity as well for dealerships too, to make sure that EV customers understand how tires wear differently than ICE vehicles.
Yeah, they're the new oil change.
Exactly. Yeah. When you talk about tires, and you mentioned if you start talking to customers about tires just when they need them, there's an issue of trust there. And what I'm finding is with dealerships who are doing video inspections, unfortunately, it's more and more of those really do help create a foundation of trust with the customer. Because when that technician is doing a video inspection and actually showing the customer exactly what he or she sees underneath their vehicle, and that they're, whatever the case is, their tires are in good shape, or their shocks are in good shape, or that type of thing, it really does create a culture of trust between the customer and the dealership. And there's lots of data and statistics on that show, customers spend more and that type of thing, and return more often when you use video inspection technology. Our company has nothing to do with video inspection technology, but it has everything to do with bringing customers back. And I think the dealerships that are actively doing that and executing that process well are well on their way to driving higher overall customer retention for the long term.
It sets expectations, right? So they'll know in advance, in so many visits, I should expect to have the discussion about my tires.
Exactly.
So I got
exactly right.
What I'm accustomed to, and a lot of people, I'm in the business, but I'm also a customer. And if you show me a video MPI and you're wanting to right away sell me a bunch of stuff, and that's the first time I've seen a video MPI, you're wrong. You're wrong. That should be done. The green, the yellow, all those things is cautionary tale, right? For tires. Hey, you don't need them right now, but I just want to let you know, blah, 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 and all the reasons why you should do this, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm starting to see much more of that. One of the things Steve Greenfield was talking about at SodaCon was were because of sales slowing down, inventories aren't what they once were. What's going on? What's going to happen, et cetera. Of course, he's really good at that kind of stuff. And biggest room for improvement is and the way to compensate for the loss of cash flow, fixed operations. It's like, are you glad to be in this side of the business right now? I sure am.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. It's never easy. If it was easy, anybody can do it, as we're fond of saying.
That's right.
But I think dealers they're obviously, I think from a business perspective, are able to pivot so quick and really respond to the market, I think better than just about any business I've seen. And when they see an opportunity to an opportunity that's good for them and good for their customers, they're gonna do it. As well as when they see challenges, they adjust and pivot quickly. I think looking at what's going on with service right now is that it's continuing to grow, and remains the backbone more so than of the dealership, more so now than ever before. And I think the future looks bright for them.
I would agree with that. And so I wanted to ask you, you're on your third report. And so I'm sure you went into the survey having some assumptions or some expectations.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think you were going to find this time around? And were you right or were you wrong?
Yeah. One of the things, a great question, Charity. I appreciate that. One of the things we found in 2023 was that appointment availability was a real issue. So if a customer couldn't get their vehicle into the dealership, get a service appointment within a certain period of time, whether that be, call it 2 weeks, they were at a high risk of defection. They told us in that 2023 study that they're more likely to leave as a result of that. I expected that to continue, and it did to an extent, but it has softened somewhat. So I think that probably had something to do with some of the restrictions and constraints that dealers were working in with around COVID, as well as what consumers were working in. that caused a longer period of time between when someone wants the appointment and when they can actually get it. So it's interesting that what we were able to derive from the data was that it's kind of like a smoke alarm in that you don't think about it until it goes off. So if customers are able to get an appointment within a few days and it's a non-issue for them, then it's a non-issue for the dealership. But if that appointment availability starts to stretch out, then that smoke alarm starts going off and customers think, do I really want to go back to the dealership because I really need to get my car serviced and I want to get it done within this period of time. So dealers really have to be careful about monitoring their appointment setting processes, what their schedule looks like, and modifying it so that they really keep it within that sweet spot of when customers want to bring their vehicles in for service and repairs.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the biggest takeaways, I think, is that the core drivers haven't changed from your report. Like we just talked about tires a bit. And I know what they are. I don't know how much you want to give away in this episode, but why do you think some of these things stay so consistent over time? Why is it always about tires? Or, do the same things come up over and over again? And you could just sit there and say, nothing seems to be changing.
Yeah. No, I think there are some things that do remain consistent. There are some things that are changing too. And one of the things that we saw changing are around communication preferences. And that's kind of to be expected. More and more people, even people like with gray hair like me, are adapting to text messaging and digital communications and that type of thing. And so those preferences are changing I think, for the better. I think the other things that we saw in the report that were new was we asked a series of questions around mobile service. And I think that that's a really interesting and exciting opportunity for dealerships. Mobile service is, frankly, mobile service is something that I've been interested in for decades. When I was in graduate school working on my MBA back in the early 90s, I did a capstone project on a mobile oil change business. And so it's, and it's something I've kept my eye on for a long time. But I think the technology has changed such and customer expectations has changed that we've reached a point, in the last couple of years where there is the opportunity for dealerships to be successful with doing mobile service. And customers are expecting it too. When you can, order something on Amazon on our computer or on your phone today and it shows up in 3 hours on your doorstep, the expectation is, well, why can't I get my car serviced like that too? So I think there's a demand for it. I think the challenge is that I think that dealers really need to jump in and be all in on it. I think those dealers that are all in are finding that it is a great opportunity to grow their business, without having to grow their facilities footprint, and customers are responding to it. The data shows that customers who utilize mobile service and have the MPS scores are very high.
Yes.
The likelihood of them coming back is very high. But I think that executing well on mobile service requires a different mindset on the dealer's part than it does executing service in the service drive. I think it really requires a big commitment to a different type of process, a different type of employee who's doing that mobile service, as well as a different level of expectation for profitability and long-term value. So I think those dealers who are fully committed to it are doing well, and those that are not are kind of just treading water for the time being. It'll be interesting to see in some cases what happens when some of the OEMs that are subsidizing it pretty handsomely pull back on those subsidies. Will it be a standalone business at that point? And I think that those dealers who are executing well now will, if that ever happens, some of those subsidies go away, will continue to be profitable and make sense for their business.
Yeah, one unicorn is Bozard Ford in Lincoln.
Yeah, sure.
Jeremy Roberts and Ed. I mean, it's just what they have, like 50. I could be wrong. 1 or 2 vehicles within that, though. They do much more than just oil changes. But that's how it all started. I remember years ago. And what they've done in the market it's incredible. You can't tiptoe. It's like you got to jump in because the water's cold where you first tiptoe into it. Okay, you pop it. and everybody will pay for convenience. Okay. And I hear sometimes in rooms people talking about, well, it's too expensive. Well, okay. So yeah. And I've said this so often. It's like, but I'm going to say it again. So I have a convenience store and it's $5 for a gallon of milk down the road, or I can go to Walmart and get it for $1.99. Which one's cheaper? It's really the convenience store. Because I'm there and back and it's convenient and I'm 1 or 2 minutes, or it's a 45-minute round trip. And where the dairy, if you think I'm walking out of there with a gallon of milk and it's not spending $100+, that ain't going to happen either. Cause I'll get this smell and I need some of this, I need some of that. And so I think the consumers are ready, and I think it's going to be really big.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting point. I had a fixed ops director tell me, who was big into the tire, recognized the value of the tire business, tell me that he had a customer once who complained to him, well, I can just go to Costco and get a set of tires there. And he said, those tires at Costco are going to cost you at least $1,000 more than what you can get from me. And he's like, what are you talking about? $1,000 more? Because when you walk through that aisle, you're going to see the big screen TV, and you're going to see all the other stuff that you weren't planning on buying at Costco when you go in there for tires, which I thought was an interesting take on it.
You won't be able to get out of there without the 5-pound jug of mayonnaise.
Exactly. Yes.
And all the other stuff that you're going to get along the way.
I did that early on when Sam's, because we don't have a Costco here. Sam's opened up. This is, I don't know, forever ago. And I bought that mayonnaise, Charity. I bought that.
And you still have it?
Oh, great deal. And I threw 3/4 of it away,
Exactly.
years later.
I would if I had space in the fridge, because, I'm all for about buying in bulk, but.
Yeah.
So tell us, Bill, a little bit. We've touched on a little bit so far, but what are some of the top drivers, do you think, for retention this time around? And if we know what the top drivers for retention are, why are some dealers still losing customers?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think one of the reasons is that we have to approach, I think the most successful dealers approach retention, or what I prefer to call it, is customer continuity. Because when a customer buys a car from you, every new car sold by a dealer, they have 100% retention at that point. They own that customer, and it's up to them to make sure that customer returns. And I think understanding what those key defection points are, whether it be the first service visit, whether it be when the factory warranty runs out, whether it be tires, understanding what those key defection points are, and having a system in place, ideally that's proactive about addressing that customer where they are in their customer journey and taking the appropriate steps to make it as easy as possible for that customer to say, yes, I'm returning. And that might be as simple as setting up the next service appointment when they're leaving from their current one. I'm surprised still today how many the dealerships that do that do a really good job at it. And I think that's a great opportunity for more dealers to do that. I mean, think about every consumer experience you have that's on a repeat basis. Whether that's, I go to my barber every 5 weeks. I set that appointment now. I go to the dentist every 6 months. You set that appointment at the end of the last one. Automotive service is largely the same way. And I think there's that's just one example of how we can create a system that is proactive, looking forward for that, where that customer is in their customer journey, and taking the appropriate steps there. So I think looking at it as an overall system, I think is helpful, as opposed to, gee, traffic is down this month. Let's send out a direct mail piece that gives 15% off of an oil change. That may help drive a little bit of business, but it's not going to really help with your retaining those customers and bringing about continuity. It's all about making sure the customer has value. We communicate that value effectively to that customer at the appropriate period of time, and understand what their next step is. What is the next step for making sure we're taking care of you and your automobile in the fashion that is in your best interest.
What a great point. So I was thinking that, and then you started talking about it. It doesn't matter where you go. Dentist, I mean, everywhere you go, there's always an appointment set. That's what's next you in. If maybe it doesn't work, well, yeah, I think that's okay. What early, late week, early morning, late morning, early afternoon, whatever it is. And it may not even work out for the oil change time or whatever the service is coming in. But there's a reminder sent out, and there's a message that's sent out. And the chances are likely that they're going to show or reschedule for because something came up that they didn't know about 3 months before, or 4 months before, etc. That is so critical. That one thing you just mentioned, I don't see it happening often, yet it happens every dentist visit, and I've been to hundreds of those in the last couple of years. There's a lot of, and there's always a next of what's next to it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, we sit, the customer leaves our service facility, and then we sit there and wring our hands and worry: are they going to return? Are they going to return? Are they going to return? Take the steps now to make sure that you're, maximizing the probability that the customer is going to come back in 6 months or 4 months or whatever the case may be, and then redeploy your marketing budget into confirming that appointment, as opposed to casting a wide net to all these customers who are due for service, but you don't have an appointment set yet.
This is big. This is so big that with Lithia, with Sonic, with everybody's getting into the service side, and they're focusing at even Ford Direct and the shop. They're talking about things that they haven't ever talked about to their dealers. It's always about the variable side, what's going on their website. No, it's fixed operation, customer pay retention. And that's I stole that from Greg Noonan, if you know who Greg Noonan is.
Yeah, I know Greg.
He says customer pay retention order, not customer paid repair order. And it really makes sense. Wow. Well,
Yep. Yeah. I even heard a dealer group, I was at a conference a month or two ago, and the head of a large dealer group was talking about rethinking their fixed operations in the sense of specifically around customers who have unplanned repairs, and thinking about triaging those customers like you would in an emergency room. All too often, when you have a customer who is, for example, towed into the dealership, obviously they don't have an appointment, and that can create some chaos internally, as well as, more importantly for the customer. But having a process in place, and they had a specific term that they were using to brand it. I don't remember, or planning on branding it, but I thought that was a great idea. And just in terms of looking at that and approaching it from a like in a hospital emergency room, what do we need to do to take care of this customer based upon the situation right now as quickly as possible, so that we can get them back on the road with a minimal amount of disruption to our internal operations, because we're planning for it. So I thought that was a really interesting take, and I think a real proactive one as well.
it was great information. Thank you.
Yeah, it kind of is interesting because it feeds into my next question, which is, are we overcomplicating fixed stops when the fundamentals are actually simple? And that's also a very easy question, but it's also very difficult. When I ask this question for people, the answer feels so simple, but yet here we are talking about it still.
Yeah. It's really easy to get deep into the weeds.
It's almost philosophical.
Yeah, especially when you're an outsider. It's obviously easier to see the forest through the trees when you're an outsider, but it's tricky. I think you have to keep your eye on the big picture, but also understand that the devil is in the details, and it's hard to do that on a day in and day out basis. And that's why I think it's really important to just have a good team around you, and who can, in a good way in which communicating, an open way to communicate with your team, so that even the most junior person on your team can give you their perspective, which sometimes is the one that is most clear-eyed, because they don't have all of this history and baggage in their mind to identify problems as well as to look for opportunities too.
Yeah.
So I know that's a philosophical response to your question, but it's tough.
Great. If they could just start with two simple things, there's a lot of people that start real quick and then give up real quick too. Because they do, as your question, overcomplicate it. I think if you would just focus on the customer, and because they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So if you establish a relationship with them, everything else appears to be easier. And then from that, if you provide a great experience and you're in your active delivery, you're scheduling the next appointment and they're hem-hawing around it, you should ask some questions. I mean, why wouldn't they want to? They're not going to say, well, no, I'll call you when I'm ready to come back to the dentist 10 years from now. No, no. They want to follow business. It's crucial, right? That maintenance costs a lot less than major repairs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it comes down to just leadership, in terms of if leadership has a long-term view and are not judging their performance based upon what did we do this month, obviously monthly performance is important, but if you're bringing in new people, new systems and that type of thing, it takes time, and I think you need to see progress, but I think kind of looking at it not over a month or a quarter or a year, but over multiple years, and I think sometimes looking at what's the lifetime value of a customer kind of gets you to think about making sure, are we doing the right things that are going to help us in the long term? And sometimes it takes some time for those things to really get traction, but once they do, their payoff is long over a long period of time.
I
which
think
is great.
the simplest thing you could start with, I want everybody to hear this. The simplest thing you could start with is, why don't you just say hello and smile and introduce yourself and welcome them or welcome them back, right? If you get, that doesn't cost anything. Okay. If you could just, I don't even get hello. I get a frown. Do you have an appointment? Are you kidding me? Yeah. Still goes on everywhere.
Bill, this year, what do you think you've learned about the importance of price? Do you think we're in a price sensitive customer era again?
I think we are. Yeah. The data that I've looked at really over the past couple of years is that I've seen, I think this is well documented, that the inflation rate around automotive repair and maintenance has been higher than the general inflation rate. And now that we're in a situation where that's just going up more and more, I think the price is becoming more of a factor for everyone. It's not a situation where one segment of the market has an advantage now over another. I think everyone is experiencing these inflationary impacts, but I do think it creates an opportunity for us to make sure that we're communicating with the customer, with the vehicle owner, exactly about what value they get for their dollar, and recognizing that in most cases, you can always get it done cheaper elsewhere, but can you get the level of value that you get at the dealership? And I think the answer to that is almost invariably the dealership is the best place to get the highest amount of value. And it's a matter of just communicating that. I think there's other opportunities out there as well to help address this. We have found that prepaid service bundles, where a customer can buy 3 oil changes, 3 tire rotations, 3 car washes at a time, is a great way to help that customer lock in for a relatively short period of time, probably 18 months or so, their price on their automotive service, and they appreciate that. Not to mention the fact that we see from a retention standpoint, just tremendous retention rates around customers who do buy those service bundles. The challenge for the dealership is getting enough penetration into their customer base so they move the needle on retention. And that typically is around 50 to 60%. But it's a great way in which to help customers with price now, as well as make sure that they return, because they've already made the decision to return when they buy the package. It's just a matter of waiting for that to happen. So, but yeah, I think prices will continue to be is an issue now and will continue to be an issue.
It is with me too. That's a great question, Jerry, because I'm price conscious as well, but I also respect value. And if you win me over and the value's there, as long as you don't have to be the cheapest, as long as you're competitive, but and I have that relationship and there's value associated with that, I'm coming back even if it is $10 or $15 an oil change more. I am. I'm not saying everybody's the way, but do you think, Bill, that people think like that?
I think so. Yeah. I think, I had a mentor tell me a long time ago, he said, sounds a bit hyperbolic, bit of a hyperbole.
Yeah.
But he said, no one in the history of the world has ever said your price is too high and actually meant it. What they're saying is I don't see the value. So it's our job to help them understand the value that we're providing. I think that's a great way to approach our communication with our customers about the value that we provide and being proactive about it, so that question doesn't even come up.
I love it.
Yeah. So if a dealer says we can't compete on price, what would you say back to that dealer?
Bravo. You shouldn't. Unless you're a low cost provider, you can't compete on price. And dealerships don't have the lowest cost structure. So I think that creates a positive constraint around how we approach our marketing and communication messages to our vehicle owners. And you need to be in the ballpark. You need to be within 20% or so to be safe, but you don't have to be the cheapest one out there. And I think that if you recognize that we are not the cheapest, that elevates you to be more demanding of yourself and of your employees to provide a level of service that a customer can't get anywhere else. And so I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing.
We have this mystery shopping thing that one of the things we do for our dealers, and I'm in my own experience, I'm a little leery when everybody else is more than you on every service. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just get a little hesitant thinking something's not adding up right.
Yeah. Because you're going to have to make it up then on upsells and that type of thing.
Yeah. Or there's something in the disclaimer you didn't see.
Yeah.
There's fine print somewhere. They're going to get me somewhere. Yeah.
Right. And that takes you back to, it takes you back to the question of trust, which we talked about earlier. So.
Right. And speaking of returning back to topics, we did hit on tires a little bit, but the tire data I think is really significant this year because most customers are still buying tires somewhere else outside of the dealership. And how can we get that to change? How can we finally move the needle and get customers back into the dealership to purchase tires?
Yeah, great question, Charity. I think the lowest hanging fruit is awareness. We have to make sure that customers are aware that we sell tires as dealerships and that we are the best source for tires. And we also have to recognize that, as we go in and out of dealerships every day, we see tire displays in the service drive, we see signage, we see marketing material. Like, how can you not understand that we sell tires? But we have to meet customers where they are, and we're biased because we see things because we're in the industry that the average consumer, that my wife wouldn't see when she walks into a dealership. So I think we have to recognize and have to meet people where they are. And, but I think awareness is the big thing. If, we see just customers in our survey who were aware that their dealerships sold tires were 10 percentage points more likely to purchase tires from the dealership. So that's low hanging fruit, and just making sure that the customers are aware is the big thing. We do that through the inspections, through multi-point inspections, through the video inspections, through other forms of communication. And as we talked about earlier, it's just a long-term, constant communication about tires. So I think it's an awareness issue.
Well, and I know that as far as signage and things like that go, I know that I'm guilty of just blocking all of that out. And, with just how much we're bombarded with advertising and marketing, anytime we leave the house or anytime we look at a screen, we get really used to blocking out those messages.
Not to plug our own company, but that's one of the things that we do for dealerships is raising that level of awareness of tires by including renewable road hazard tire protection as a standard part of the dealership's oil changes or scheduled maintenance services or even MPI inspections. And it's a way in which to let customers know, hey, if your tire gets damaged, just bring it back to us and we'll either repair it or replace it up to X amount of dollars at no charge to you. And that benefit automatically renews when you return for your next service. So that's just a great way in which to drive awareness. And one of the things that we've seen dealerships really be able to help sell more tires by just simply making their customers more aware that they're the best source for tires.
That's a tremendous value right there. Just covering that stuff. Yes.
Yeah. Well, Bill, tell me a little bit about convenience-driven loyalty.
Yeah.
And what you've learned from that.
I think that our comparison set can't just be automotive maintenance service. It needs to be every consumer experience, that consumers are now measuring their experience at the dealership against their experience with Amazon.com, against their experience with food delivery services, against their experience with, whatever, scheduling a doctor's appointment, whatever the case may be. They're looking for experiences that have a minimal amount of friction. And if we can match our processes so that there's less friction at the point at which the customer needs a service, we're much more likely to win. So I think just thinking about that and thinking about how can we improve our systems so that there's less friction for the customer will help make it easier for customers to choose the dealership for service.
Well said. They're comparing them. So everybody wants it now. Everybody's on these devices. You have 3 clicks and you better be serving up the right content, the right message at the right time, because after that, they're out of there. They're on to the next thing. Now, I don't have that experience at Amazon. Although I don't even know how they do it. I mean, I have literally, like it wasn't 3 hours, but the same day got my product delivered. And usually it's the next day, but it's like, how do they do that?
Yeah.
How do they do that? But
yeah,
we do compare that, don't we, to the convenience factor and
right
with value. Yeah.
Right.
Is it cheaper on Amazon? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
Love to go to my dealership, but it's so far away. For me, it's much easier just to go down the street to get my standard oil changes and things like that. So convenience has always been a factor for me.
Yep, for sure. Yep. And so I think that, we used to compare, for example, it was, how can we be quicker? And speed is obviously very important, but we were competing against quick loops, and now we're competing against other customer experiences, not only in terms of speed, but in terms of overall convenience. And as I said, the less friction, the better. But yeah, it's a challenge, both a challenge and an opportunity, because I think, for example, with the mobile service piece, that's an opportunity to really delight a customer. And one of the things that we found in the report is the awareness of mobile service from their dealership is very low. So I think there's a great opportunity there to be able to say to a customer, hey, by the way, we do have a mobile service option. And if you'd like for us to come out and, complete that recall or do the service, do the oil change, whatever the case may be, is a great opportunity to surprise and delight customers.
I don't even hear much of that, honestly, but it should be talked about more and more and promoting that, giving customers, they may not even think that that's an option.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's where my mind went as well is, mobile service could fill this gap and there is a real opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do you think, Bill? If a dealer fixes one thing in this report, what should it be? Should it be tires? Should it be mobile service? What do you think the message should be to dealers?
Oh,
wow, that's
one thing.
Bill, you just everything, right? No.
Here's my answer to that, and it's outside of the report a bit because I don't think we covered this in the report. But I think the one thing, if there's one thing that a dealership should address, it's that first service appointment. Our data shows that only 57% of new car buyers return back to the dealership for that first service at the dealership where they purchased the car. Only 57%. And there's still a tremendous opportunity there to get that first service appointment fixed. If they get that locked down, they're much more likely to have a better retention down the road. Because if we can't get them in for that first service appointment, we're not going to get them in for the second one or the third one or tires or anything else. So I think it's that first step in the customer journey that is absolutely essential. And so some dealerships do this exceptionally well. And they see the impact on their retention, but there's a big opportunity there to improve on that, and that'll improve everything down the road. So that if there's one thing to fix, it would be that first step in the journey.
One of my practices when I was in retail and sold, before coming, moving up and all, I would always introduce my customers. I had a go-to, but if he wasn't there, there was a second go-to, but I'd always make that introduction. So make them feel a little warmer and cozy. Or here's what you get. Just, you get a customer that parks up front in front of the dealership and walks in and said, yeah, I need to get an oil change. They don't even know to drive. It's the service trial. I mean, that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes out to education and opportunity. Yeah.
Good question, Jared.
There's such a disconnect between what dealers offer and what customers think they offer.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to ask, how do we solve that? How do we close that gap? Is it bad marketing? Is it the wrong kind of marketing? What is it exactly?
Yeah, I think it's education. I think that it is making sure customers understand really when they first purchase the vehicle, helping them understand what the future looks like in terms of service. As Russell said, introducing them to the service department, introducing them to the team in service so that they see a familiar face when they come back in, and letting them know, hey, that first service on your Honda CRV is going to be due in 6 months. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. We'll do a full inspection. You'll get a video inspection showing you the results of your car and that type of thing. And I think just setting that up time after time so that they know, here's the next step. What can we do as a dealership to maximize the continuity of this customer with our business, and anticipating what that next step is. And in this example, it's scheduled maintenance, but it could also be for an unplanned repair. It could also be a situation where if you find yourself, out of gas, or the car doesn't start, or with a flat tire, here's who to call. Call the number on the sticker on your windshield. You're going to get towed back here, and helping educate that customer so that they know what to do in each situation, I think, is the key thing. It's an educational piece, and it's not easy, and it's difficult to do that consistently from a marketing perspective. But it really is a one-on-one communication thing at the dealership.
It is. I left something out because it wasn't possible every time because of what was going on in the drive. But when I would introduce a customer, I would say 100% of the time, the vast majority of the time, I had the opportunity to do that. But when it was appropriate, we would even schedule a first appointment right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
When it was appropriate, they weren't, the advisors weren't all over the place, etc. So that makes a huge impact too.
It does. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it sounds like processes are an enormous tool to help aid in closing a lot of these gaps. So after 3 years of, I guess it's not 3 years of research, it's 9, right? Well, 3 times in 9 years, every 3 years.
Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception dealers still have about their customers?
Here's what I think it is. As I'm sure you guys hear day in and day out, dealerships will talk about the fact that they retain the customer pretty well in the first couple of years of ownership, and then they defect and they lose that opportunity. And that's true. But I think what is eye-opening, or at least was eye-opening for me when I learned this, is that when you look at the dealership parts and service department, and if you break down the revenue on parts and service by model year, it's a nice normal distribution curve. And the peak of that curve is right around 5 years, meaning that 5-year-old vehicles provide the highest amount of customer pay parts and service revenue to the dealership. It is the largest contributor to revenue in parts and services, 5-year-old vehicles, despite the fact that it's a small overall percentage retention rate. It's still the highest percentage of parts and service revenue. So I think that really does help reframe the conversation around customer continuity and retention to help dealerships understand that, boy, we really do need to get that first service appointment set, because if we don't do that, the chances of continuing to see that customer in year 5 are going to be pretty low. So it's just, again, anticipating that customer's needs and making sure that we're proactive about addressing it before they need to show up.
It's low because we caused it. That 5 years, but most of them, if it's nationally 7 out of 10 have, then look at all the billion-dollar companies we created as a result of fallout right there. Because after that, they're going to the independents. You're right. It's that 5 year. Yeah, it's hard to eliminate a lot of that. And do you have any? Do you have any research that shows that if they? I mean, I have some that I hijacked from somebody a few years ago. is there any statistics about the people who do purchase tires during that warranty period? What does that look like on the retention side of one coming back and buying a newer pre-owned vehicle?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have the answer to that. That's a question that we have been our data analysts. I've been harping on our data analysts to get me an answer to that. The challenge is that it seems like every dealership uses different op codes and part numbers for tires, so we can't. It's really difficult to find the answer to that question unless you're analyzing a single dealership, which we're doing. But yeah, I think it's a great question. I'd love to know the answer to that.
Well, I use a number, and that's 67%. Now, I can't, if you were to ask me where's the supporting statistics, Russell's not a supporting statistics kind of guy, but I did hear that from somebody. If they buy a set of tires, 67% of those will continue to service with you past the warranty period.
Right.
Makes sense, but nothing that I would put up against you to prove it.
Yeah, I do. I think that's an interesting, Russell. One statistic I do know that from our business is that I believe it's 59% of customers who have a road hazard claim. So they have a damaged tire, they bring it back to the dealership to have it repaired or replaced. 59% of them return at least one time in the subsequent 12 months. And of course, that could be a brand new, it could be a customer driving a 6-month-old vehicle. It could be a customer driving a 12-year-old vehicle. But that's adjacent to the question you asked. And I would think that 67% number is probably pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, it'll probably come to me, in the middle of the night when
Exactly.
I'll wake up 3 o'clock. I need to call Bill and I need to tell him that's where I got the number from.
Well, let us know if you ever do get the answer to that, Bill. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
And we're wrapping up here soon, but what are some takeaways that we could end on today?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I think looking at meeting your customer where they are and understanding that what's the next logical step for this customer's relationship with my dealership, and how do I be proactive about addressing that now? How do I set that next service appointment now? How do I make sure that that customer knows that whatever it is their needs are in the future, that we're here for them? I think looking at customers as your customer journey, the journey the customers are on as a system. What is our system to make sure that we are maximizing the chances of not only satisfying this customer, because satisfaction does not equal retention, but making sure that that customer knows that we are the best source for their needs, whether it's scheduled maintenance, unplanned repairs, tires, whatever the case may be, and having a system in place that recognizes what those key defection points are, and having specific processes and products in place at each of those defection points to make sure that we address it and bring that customer back to our business again and again.
Well said. We'll wrap us up, Russell.
Bill Stringer, thank you very much for coming on again and sharing all this great information, particularly all the stuff you did out of your third report. We appreciate that. We appreciate all you do for this industry. Sherry and I appreciate you for coming on again. We're humbled and honored. For all of you out there, you're gonna see all kinds of little shorts coming out. Great information, great talking points, great ideas, particularly with all the things that a lot of you are talking about today regarding fixed operations and service and customer retention. And with that, it's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you, Russell and Charity. Really appreciate you having me here. It's my honor and pleasure to be here. And thanks so much. And thanks for all that you do for the industry as well.
Thank you so much, Bill.